I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast. I'm Julia Lessing, and today's episode is a little bit different because two talented graduates from the Guardian Actuarial Leadership Program are taking over as guest hosts. Jennifer Ng and Peter Whittigan bring you this special interview with Alissa Holz, CEO of RGA Australia and New Zealand, to unpack how she approaches strategic thinking as a senior leader. Jennifer and Peter have prepared and recorded this episode for their thought leadership task as part of the Guardian Actuarial Leadership Program, and at the end of the session, they'll share their reflections on their experience being podcast hosts. I'm excited for you to hear this fresh perspective as our guest hosts explore how strategic thinking shapes successful leadership. Enjoy the conversation.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Peter Whittigan. I'm a pricing actuary at IAG. Co-hosting with me today is Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ng, a pricing actuary at January. Today we're talking strategic thinking. Joining us today is Alissa Holz from RGA Australia. She's the CEO of Australia and New Zealand. Welcome, Alissa. So to start off with our conversation, would you mind telling us a bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Alissa Holz. I'm an actuary by profession. I'm not necessarily allowed to open too many spreadsheets anymore as I've moved away from that into sort of more managerial roles. I come from Queensland, big Maroons supporter and State of Origins this week, so looking forward to a good win on Wednesday night.
Good luck.
So I guess it's been like a number of years in RGA, and I guess my understanding is that you started off with being an actuary and then gradually moving on to a leadership role. So I guess what made you want to do move from being an actuary to taking on the CEO role, or was it the plan, or does it just like happen as it go?
Look, I've had a really great career, and my career's been sort of both organic and purposeful in what I've been doing. There's only really been 3 decisions that I've ever had to make in my career, and I thought I'd run them through for you. The first was becoming an actuary. So I literally got an A to Z of careers when I was in year 11, and I got as far as actuary and went, that's me. And the reasons I liked it was it sounded hard, it sounded like something that was difficult to do, and it sounded like a real job. So that meant that kicked me off to do a degree in mathematics, and then I worked at Suncorp Life for about 8 years. And I had a great career there. It was a really small team, but so we did everything. So I got to the 8-9 year mark and went, I need something more. And the decision then was, do I move into general insurance or do I move out and move into something else? The decision I came to was to move into reinsurance, again, because someone told me it was hard. So I wanted to challenge myself and I wanted to move into something that would really expand my thinking. Very fortunate at RGA. It was a great company, is a great company, and I've worked with it. I've developed into a chief pricing actuary role. I was chief pricing actuary for Asia for about 10 years. And again, I got to a point of, well, what next? I could have continued down the subject matter expert path, but decided, you know what, actually, I think is really hard and is challenging for me would be to move away from being an expert advisor to being someone who's in front of the client, having to drive forward with the strategy. So with that, I moved into the Australian office into a business development role in front of the client and really challenging myself in a very different way, taking the advice from my actuaries, but having to make the decisions and be responsible for those decisions. Then from that, organically, given my strength of my technical skills in actuarial, and then the learnings I'd made in business development, the CEO role became sort of an organic growth position for me. I will call out that I don't think I would have got here without great team around me, great mentors, and great sponsors.
Definitely. I think obviously it's all teamwork, but
That's right.
it's also like having those moments that where you need to make decisions that also like get you to
Drive you
this
forward.
role. Yeah,
right.
yeah, that's right.
I might just sort of follow up on that point. Is how do you sort of motivate yourself to keep pursuing the hard things? Because I think most of us, when I certainly naturally will find, things difficult and probably shy away from them to some extent. Is that something you sort of do deliberately? Is it just something you've always done? How do you sort of keep going in that direction?
It is deliberate. I do like scaring myself. It is, but it comes from knowing I have a technical and a security net. So you've got a base on which to jump from. So they've generally, my decisions have been sideward steps, knowing that I could fall back on my technical skills and go back into what I was doing. So they're not the biggest leap of faith. They're sort of a small sideways testing the ground. But I think it's good to feel stretched, and I think it's good to be uncomfortable in a new situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard it said if you live a life in fear, you live a life too small.
Yep.
To some extent. So it's do you go about preparing for those sort of leaps in any particular way, or do you just sort of, as they come up, you just challenge yourself to make a leap and go, you know what, I'm going to give it a go anyway?
Yeah, so I've been working for a long time, so there haven't been that many leaps. I will reiterate, you do try and get that depth and then the breadth. Preparing yourself, you end up, there is a decision about staying that's as big as the decision about leaving, or is as big as the decision of moving. So I was told that once when I was in my 20s, that any decision you have every day is still as big as, the change. So I remind myself that when I'm in a place of comfort, that this is a decision that I'm staying here. Is this what I want to do? The decision to stay is just as big as the decision to go.
Yeah, in some sense, it's sort of made for you in a way if you don't make a decision, isn't it?
Yes.
It's really interesting. Well, I might pivot the conversation towards the strategic thinking topic, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How would you define strategic thinking in the context of a life reinsurance business, or just insurance business more generally, if that's easier?
Look, it's a great question. I think, in my view, strategic thinking is when you have to look at things through two lenses or more. So if you have to look at something that deals with today and tomorrow, or if you have to look at something that deals with different stakeholders, that's where strategic thinking comes in. So I have two general lenses that I do look at regularly. One is around our stakeholders. So every decision needs to go through a lens of our clients, our associates and employees, our shareholder, and then the community. So not forgetting that, we have to be a responsible entity in this market. So when I have conflicts in that, that's where a strategic thinking needs to come in. And the second lens is always a yesterday, today, and tomorrow lens. How did we get here? Where are we now? And what's happening now? And then where do we want to be? So they're complex challenges, and there's no right answer, which again, going back to my actuarial world, I really liked a right answer, but there is no right in this. There is just the next step. And which direction are you trying to take that next step? But it is a really fascinating place to spend time in.
Has your sort of definition, if we call it that, evolved much over time, or is that a fairly consistent picture that you've sort of looked towards strategic thinking from?
No, look, it has certainly developed over time. So some of these lenses have come from leaders and others that I have been inspired by over time. So particularly when I talk about my 4 stakeholders, that was from a previous CEO at RGA. That was her lens, which really resonated with me of that's a really good way to look at things. But every situation is different. I am fully open to having a blind spot and knowing and learning something new. I'm always interested in if someone has a different way for me to think about things. That curiosity and that idea of being open is critical to what's next, because no one has the answer.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about strategy, isn't it?
Yes.
It to some extent is, I guess, a bet in a way. It's like it's kind of a serious commitment that you probably shouldn't know the answer to, because if you did, if it was obvious, then we should just do it anyway, I'm guessing.
That's right. That's right.
So it's not really a choice, right?
Yeah, no, it's about how everyone comes together and where you're moving towards. But you're steering a ship, so we can only move forward together.
That's right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go, Peter.
I was going to ask, is there any frameworks or tools that you use when you are sort of formulating strategy or doing strategy, so to speak?
Look, lots of frameworks. I love an acronym. Love an acronym. Certainly, look, everyone should be able to do a SWOT on themselves, their team, and their company within about 10 minutes. And everyone should get that about 80-90% right. So constantly thinking about what is your SWOT, what is your team's SWOT, and what is the company's SWOT is useful. So that's my go-to pretty much every day. The other things I've been thinking about lately, I've just finished the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, and it says first who, then what. So once you've done your SWOT, who do you want to bring into your discussion and your decision making? Who's that team? Because they will help you develop the what and what you're going to do with it. So that's really critical. The second point he talks about is confronting the facts. So being really brutal about what are the facts and what situation you're in. The Australian life insurance industry has been challenged for growth. We shouldn't be hiding from that. So understanding what that means and what you should do with that is really critical. And the other things that I think, the other acronyms that I really like, I like the rapid decision-making acronym. And this is really about working out whose decision is this. So you've got each person allocated to, are you a recommender? Are you part of the input, or are you the decider? Because often when you're working on strategy, it isn't about everyone agreeing. It is who does make that decision. So from my perspective, while I formulate a strategy, I still have to take that to my board and to my shareholder representative to work through what is that strategy and do I have approval for that strategy. So lots of acronyms, read all the acronyms and take what you get from them. You don't have to use them in the framework they're given to you. Use them in the framework that works.
Have you ever had to sort of pivot mid-course, like while you start off, doing analysis and you got, your acronym or paradigm? Have you found halfway through that actually we don't like this or this isn't working and we've jumped to another one or something? Has that ever happened?
Look, pretty regularly. So I think if I think through a tender response and how we quote to a client, often through that process, you've done what your SWOT is and you think you know what the client's problem is. But as you talk to them and as you get a deeper understanding, you may uncover, and you often do uncover, that their actual problem is something else. And so you have to pivot, completely change how you are pitching, completely change potentially your pricing approach, and come to them with different terms, different focus to try and solve their actual problem rather than what they wrote on the paper. So that's the fun. Keep your knees bent and you're not quite sure what's going to come around the corner.
Hi, I'm Bill Morella, CEO of Actex Learning, and I'm excited to introduce our latest publication, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, the Modern Manager's Toolkit by Julia Lessing, a qualified actuary and executive coach with over 20 years of experience. This book is packed with practical strategies, real-world insights, and expert guidance to help you navigate the challenges of modern management. Whether you're a new manager or aiming for executive leadership, this resource will equip you with the skills to thrive. Get your copy today at actexlearning.com and take the next step in your actuarial career.
Speaking of coming around the corner, I think Alissa, you've been involved in some of the education piece
Yes.
with the Actuaries Institute. Do you think sort of strategic thinking, strategic tools is something that we perhaps should include in actuaries' curriculum? I know we're very sort of technical and we love a good framework and a process.
That's right, we do.
But I wonder, what are your thoughts on the value that would sort of bring to actuaries as a brand if you...
Look, I think that's the value that actuaries have always been asked to be that advisor to the business. And so actuaries do need to decide, do they want to be the advisor or do they want to be the decision maker? But regardless, they are the advisor to the business. So they need to understand the strategic nature of the business and what's going on in the industry, in the environment, and how their financials are playing out in terms of what the business does. Whether it's educational, whether it's mentoring, support, senior leadership, encouraging that piece of thinking, that I don't have a deep view on whether we should have this as a subject. Actuaries are really good at getting a result and getting through their exams, but this is something that should continually be challenged. So it may fit better in the CPD piece rather than the fellowship exams would be where they naturally fall. So
Makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah, I was sort of wondering, would that sort of elevate actuaries above just sort of, statutory roles and
Yes.
the sort of mandatory number cruncher or something to
Yep.
being like a true sort of strategic advisor or partner.
I'd love to see more actuaries claim that space. Claim that space.
Absolutely.
And does your actuarial background give you an advantage or a solid foundation to make these strategy or better utilize any frameworks that you have?
So it helps me. So I'm in a life insurer. So our financials obviously are driven heavily by the actuarial reserving. So understanding that helps me understand the context. But I think regardless, you get the right people around you. So back to get the right people on the bus or first who, then what? You need a range of thinkers and a range of skills in that space. So an actuary should be one of them, but you probably, you need a lawyer, you need someone with a risk background, you need someone with a sales background or a consumer background. That has to be part of the group of thinking. And that's ignoring the cyber risk and the IT risk, which, you can't avoid anymore. So
Yeah, that's right. Having the right people in the room and having the right tools and frameworks is very important.
Yeah.
So, but I was just thinking, as a CEO, implementing those strategies involves making tough decisions and not everyone agrees with, and especially when you have a team of people like you're relying on, then they have different views. And how do you handle moments that you need to go against the grain or you need to make unpopular calls? Do you have an example that you could share with us?
Sure. Look, it's not the funnest part of the job. So as I'm reflecting on this, what I think is the most important thing is trust. So if your team trusts you and if you have a buildup of trust within your organization, the hard calls land better because people understand that you are thinking about this through multiple lenses. You haven't rushed to these decisions. You're not flippant about the change that's needed. So, so one, have trust, and then two, any decision needs to be communicated with respect and dignity. So they're my 2 points. Once I've made a decision, I can sleep at night, but you still have to see out the change. We recently, like many companies, increased the number of days minimum in the office. So we moved from 2 days minimum to 3 days minimum. This requires a lot of change from our staff. Staff are used to having their lives in a certain way. And we came to that because our clients are more in the office than we were. We need better collaboration and we need to talk to each other. One of our key strengths is we don't have silos because we're relatively small. So we need to ensure that continues. So we did move to 3 days. The way we communicated that, though, we did give everyone a school term's notice. So it was 10 weeks notice so that they could get their lives addressed. It was also, as we were moving offices, where we believed that the transport was appropriate, and we opened up conversations about those people who had challenges in their personal lives around flexible work arrangements. So opened up and documented those issues as well. But it's hard. You know, I know people have their lives and it was a change, but I do believe it's the right change moving forward for our organisation.
Yeah. So what I hear is trust and also communication is
trust, communication. Try and give people as much warning as possible to go through that change management piece. Lots of conversations, lots of talking.
That makes sense. And is there a time where the stakeholder inputs or the other your team's recommendations or feedback actually lead you to change your decision? Or is that like another example that you can think of?
So where we had to change back or do other things. Certainly when within quotes, we do that sort of piece regularly. We may change tact or we may stop doing a quote. There's been a number of times where we've been down a path with working with a client and then something comes up either through our risk lens or through the discussions our pricing team are having that mean we're just not going to get there. And having to make that call to the client and say, we're not going to quote on this business. It's not fair on our resources. We're just spinning our wheels here is, again, it's unpopular then with the client. And we have to then regroup internally with our team to say, okay, well, we couldn't get there then. What's going to change next quote? What are we doing such that we won't be halfway down a path next time? So that's when you have to pivot and you take that information from your team as they come to you.
That's why having the right people in the room and have the right people around you is so important.
And the right feedback and honesty and culture so that people do challenge and they don't just plough forward.
Yep, and don't be afraid with the facts.
That's right. Confront the facts. Yep.
Yeah. And Peter, do you have anything to add, or do you have other questions that you might want to challenge Alissa?
Sure. Well, I might pick up on an earlier point you made, Alissa, about sort of how we got here, where we are, and into the future.
Yes.
How do you balance the short term versus long term when you're thinking strategically? Like, is there quantitative metrics that you look at? Is there just a more a gut feel with some of these things?
Look, I'll go with work in progress. Work in progress. It is very easy to get caught up in the urgent but not important. It's very easy to be busy being busy. So I have a couple of tricks which aren't overly exciting, but at the top of my catch-ups with my team and the top of my catch-ups with my manager, I have what the priorities are, what my personal priorities are for the coming fortnight. I I then also encourage everyone to talk about that, to make sure that we aren't forgetting what those longer term focus points are. When we're looking at a quote, we do have a line that we discuss, how does this fit with strategy? But we do have goals that are this year, and a yearly goal for a life insurance company is hard, but we do have goals we need to meet in terms of our quarterly results. So it's not a great science, but keeping one eye and keeping that long-term strategy top of mind and top of your email list is the only thing I've got that works for me.
Makes sense. Eye on the prize.
Yep. And it reminds you every day, then it tells you you're not doing the right thing. The other trick I do have that I know a number of people do use is you set your password to whatever your goal is for the quarter.
Oh, that's clever.
So because everyone
Constant
now has these
reminder.
really long passwords. So doing something that is your goal for the quarter and typing it in as your password meets those requirements that probably you only know what those goals are, and you have to type that in multiple times a day. So
That's very clever. I like that.
Yeah.
Life
Yeah.
hack.
That's a life hack. Yeah.
Pro tip. That
Yeah.
is cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think that might be all the questions and time we have. That was a fascinating discussion, Alissa. Thank you so much for taking us through a whirlwind tour of strategic thinking and life hacks as well. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate your time.
No
Thank you so
problems.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alissa.
Okay.
Thanks, Alissa.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well done, Peter and Jennifer. What a great interview. Before we wrap up today's episode, I'd love to hear from you and hear your reflections on what it was like to be a podcast host and what key insights you took away from your conversation with Alissa. Jennifer and Peter, what are your thoughts?
When I was listening to podcasts in the past, I thought the interviewer's job was straightforward. Just ask a few questions and you are done. But after stepping into the role myself for this episode, I now realize and appreciate the extensive preparation that is needed before and after the interview. I've learned a lot from Alissa, and what really struck me is the importance of having the right people around you when formulating the strategy, and the necessity of building trust with those people amongst us.
Stepping into the role of podcast host was incredibly fun, actually. A real privilege to be in the chair, asking the questions and shaping the conversation. Who knows? Maybe there's a new side hobby for me to take up there potentially. And in terms of insights to take forward about strategic thinking, I really loved Alissa's point about start with the who and then look at the what, as well as the little life hack of putting your quarter's goal as your password to sort of remind you every single day. I do love a sort of a little nudge and a small structural change you can make to make it easier to get something done. So those are my two key takeaways, and it was a great experience overall.
Well done, Jennifer and Peter. You did an awesome job as guest hosts. Congratulations. So there you have it. Real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.